Hi everyone, I'm Joe Brady, and today we're going to talk about the thought process, composition concerns, and technical issues that relate to capturing the best landscape under various weather conditions. In short, what do you do when the weather just doesn't cooperate? A couple weeks ago, I visited with Lee Varis, a photographer, phenomenal photo illustrator, educator, and author who is now based just south of Boston, Massachusetts. He's a recent transplant from Los Angeles area. Lee's latest book is called Mastering Exposure and the Zone System for Digital Photographers. So I knew he would be able to provide us with some great insights, both on approaching landscape photography and processing those images in post. Today's program is going to feature 3 segments we recorded on location and finishes up with a detailed step-by-step image edit. Lee has some powerful and unique image processing tips that we can all benefit from. Having a guest like Lee share his thoughts with us also provides a different point of view. And though he and I share a similar process, we can all learn new things and new ways of thinking. Now, Lee's a very zen guy, and the beauty of the scene and the changing weather really suited his message. During the 2 days of our visit and the morning before we arrived, the skies went from picture-perfect clouds to solid blue skies without a cloud to an overcast drizzle. What to look for and how to approach a scene all are going to change when the weather presents in a way that you hadn't planned or maybe hoped for. Now, one important thing to pay attention to is that capturing the best possible digital file does give you the best starting point to produce the best print. It's critical that you protect your highlights without underexposing them and that you have the best data in your image files because that's going to give you the flexibility to best process your images. So let's get started by heading out. We're going to visit with Lee Varis. We did our shoot along the Massachusetts coast at the Scituate Lighthouse in, of course, Scituate, Massachusetts. Let's take a look. Hey, Lee.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good.
So where are we? What is this place called?
We're at the Scituate Lighthouse.
So we've got an interesting thing going on here. We got a white lighthouse with a bright blue sky.
Yeah.
So what are our concerns?
Well, we don't want to overexpose that white, but we don't want to underexpose it either. So we want to place that highlight side of the lighthouse as high as we can without losing detail.
Great. I think I know something that might be able to help us with that. You're shooting which camera?
I'm shooting a Fuji X-T1.
Okay, so Lee's got a Fuji X-T1. I'm shooting a Sony Alpha 99. I've got my meter calibrated to my camera.
Yes.
As does Lee. So Lee, we've got kind of continuous light here.
Yes, we hope.
Kind of a cloudless sky.
Yes.
So
yes.
We're not going to have to do a lot of meter readings
here.
Yeah,
basically, we're going to take a reading once, set it, and forget it.
Yeah.
And
until later?
Until later, when it gets a little tricky is when the sun starts to go down, it's going to be changing like every 30 seconds.
Okay.
So that's when we're really going to need to stay on top of it.
All right, because we don't believe in
bracketing.
No bracketing.
Why bracket when it's so easy to get it right?
I love that. I love that. It's easy to get it right. Why do you want to have to sort through all those hundreds of files you're going to have to throw out to pick out the best one? I'm just going to turn around real quick. I'm just going to take a meter reading right off of the whitest part of the lighthouse there, and I'm at 100 ISO, and at 100 ISO at f8 it gives me what, 3200, but that's to put the white in the middle.
Right, this would be a zone 5 reading for that white, which
so
is crazy.
We don't want our white to be middle gray. So I've got my ISO 2 dial set to compensation, and I know my camera can do 3 stops. But since I have a circular polarizer on my lens, which is going to subtract another 2 stops of light, I have to open up 5 stops from that. Now, we could do it by hand.
Yeah, but why?
3216, it just takes too long. Holding the ISO 2 button and immediately returns
100.
100th of a second, f8, 100 ISO, that's it. I don't have to worry about it until it gets later and the sun starts to go down. So,
all right,
our cameras are set. Composition, how do we approach this thing?
Well, okay, we're going to do a little walk around and check out the different angles. I mean, we got a shot here, but we're looking for, I think, a little more foreground into background kind of thing. Something close in the foreground leading us to that white lighthouse.
Want to try the beachside view first?
Yeah, let's go over there.
Okay, we're going to head over to the beach.
All right, let me see here.
So Lee, you got your camera set up pretty low over here.
I'm hoping for a low angle, sweeping up, looking up at the white lighthouse. I want to have foreground rocks. So my challenge here is I want to make sure that I carry focus.
So what's the benefit of being this low?
Well, I get a sense of the foreground, a sense of distance. So I got near foreground and the lighthouse, and we're gonna the eye is gonna travel along those rocks as they get smaller and smaller, going up to the lighthouse.
So it's important for composition to have something leading you, having a foreground element. That's really important, and to do that, we're going to need a lot of depth of field.
So we need some depth of field. This lens stops down to 16 as maximum. So I'm trying to place my exposure for that f/16. So I take a reading off the white lighthouse.
Right, so what do you get when you read off the lighthouse?
So right now I'm getting 1,000 at 16 and a half.
And that's at 200 ISO.
At 200 ISO. Okay, so I know I can't shoot at 16 and a half. I have to shoot at closer to 16.
Right.
I also have 2.5 stop range for my highlight,
Okay.
at least where I want to place my highlight.
So again, remember that reading that he just got off of the white would place that white as a middle gray, and we don't want that. We want to push it over to the right without clipping it.
Yes. So I know that I'm totally safe at 2.5 stops. I've entered a 2.5 stop filter factor here. I'll place that down, and I'm now at f/16 at 250th. Okay, so 250, right?
Okay.
So all I do is just make sure that I know where my f-stop is. I want to make sure I'm at 250th, and I'm good right there. So now I'm ready to go, and I can I've already composed it. I'm focusing 2/3 in. So I'm not focusing at the lighthouse, although that's my primary subject. I'm trying to use the hyperfocal distance. So I'm trying to focus between the foreground and the lighthouse to get as much depth of field as possible.
So for me, with my polarizer on top of that,
Yeah, that's right.
that means for me to go to f20, I have to get it on a 15th of a second. So notice our cameras are on tripods. Know where you're going to hold that. So I'm at a 15th of a second at f20. Let's see what I got, because I have the polarizer, so that's another 2 stops. Okay, so a couple questions, particularly about metering to cover before we go any further. Someone asked, did I point the dome on the meter towards the lighthouse, or was it facing the camera? I'm not sure what scene you were talking about. What I was doing was, when I turned around to meter the lighthouse, I wasn't using the dome, I was using the spot meter. I was taking a spot meter reading off of the brightest part of the lighthouse. So in this case, when I turned around, what I did was actually look through the meter and use the 758 spot meter capabilities, because I wanted to find out where that was. And that leads up to the second question. Someone asked how I took the reading in the meter from zone 5 to the correct exposure using the ISO 2. Without going into a training specifically on the meter, one of the things you can do on a 758 is program the ISO 2 button to be a filter compensation, or in essence an exposure compensation button. And what that allows you to do is, using the Sekonic DTS software, again, something that we've done programs on before, we'll send you a link, we're able to teach the meter in essence. Yes, I know Phil from Sekonic hates when I say we're teaching the meter, but we are. What the meter does is it learns what the capabilities of the camera are. So I have a specific exposure profile for my Sony Alpha 99 in my meter. What it tells the meter is, here's what the camera thinks middle gray is, and here's how far up I can go from that before I have to worry about clipping. So in my case, when I take a spot meter reading off of that brightest white, remember a meter always returns what you pointed at into middle gray. For those of you that are into the zone system, that would be 5. Well, we don't want the whites to be 5. We want them to be probably more like 8. We want them to push them over to the right, but not worry about clipping them. So to do that, if you hold in the ISO 2 button and spin the jog wheel, what I can do is spin it until I see 3.0. So what that's doing is it's opening up 3 stops from that reading. So I take my meter reading of the white. The number it returns is putting that reading in zone 5 or middle gray. I need to push over to the right without clipping it. Zone 2 or ISO 2 with a 3-stop exposure opening will take that white and put it over to the right. So in essence what I'm doing is I'm taking the white reading and then opening up 3 stops from there. I did a program on this in detail recently. Again, when we do our follow-up, we'll include the links to those previous programs so that you can edit, you can take a look at that. By the way, I just found out that Lee is in the chat room. How you doing, Lee? So Lee is in there answering your questions, and I'll monitor that as we're going along. This is, somebody asked this, so we have $1,000 cameras and we have to take a meter reading to compensate for filters, and guess where we want the white and the 1 to 10 scale? There must be an easier way. Don't you wish your camera could just do everything for you? Well, it can't, because cameras don't see the way our eyes see. So that's why we have these tools. I'm a big fan of having a meter. You can just bracket away and hope, use the camera's meter and hope it's going to give you good exposure. But like Lee says, it's so easy to get it right, why not do it? Let's see. Lee said that he was focusing 2/3 on the way into the scene, but the text overlay said 1/3. Actually, I'll let Lee address that. Kind of depends on the lens. With his lens, it was probably appropriate to go 2/3. With my lens, it was appropriate for 1/3. So Lee, take that one, okay? Let's see. Last question before we continue on. So again, neither of us like to bracket. But if you go into HDR shooting, where would you place the highlight reading for the best exposure? It's a good question. If you're going to do HDR, meaning you're going to do multiple shots, your highlight, you're still going to want to do that one perfect shot with the highlight as far to the right as you can. Where the highlight's going to end up being overexposed is if you're in a situation where you need to do another exposure to open up the shadows. Really a subject for another day. That said, actually what I'd like to hear from you guys, if you guys will send me some notes of the kinds of things you'd like to see covered in a little more detail. I haven't done an HDR program in a couple of years. I'd be happy to do another one. If it's something you're interested in, just let me know. So let's continue on. So in following Lee's recommendation to walk around the scene, after getting the close-up shots, Lee led us out into the breakwater to take a closer look on how to incorporate other visual elements into the scene, since the sky we were presented with at that point was a solid blue without any interesting clouds to break up that solid color. When you're presented with a cloudless sky, it's generally best to limit the amount of sky in the composition, but finding other elements to help create a flow and balance can help overcome uninteresting skies. So let's head back to the lighthouse and let's find another point of view. Now, Lee and I sometimes took different points of view based on what our plans were for post-processing. I planned on adding some clouds into my scenes, and you'll see that in a bit with before and afters with the clouds. While we were out on the rocks, the tide also began to come in, and getting back to shore actually became a bit of a rush so we could protect our gear and not get swept off to sea. So let's head back to the lighthouse, and we'll follow Lee for a little different point of view. All right, Lee, so you've set up really low here. This man obviously has better knees than I do because he keeps going down on the rocks. So what's your approach here?
Well, this is sort of similar thing. Again, we don't really have a really interesting sky. So I'm trying to, use these rocks. So we have these kind of interesting boulders. So near, far, same sort of thing, hyperfocal distance to try and carry the focus. And we have now we have an interesting thing where, that we've got different light because of the angles of the facets on that lighthouse. So, like you said earlier, it's like a step wedge.
Yeah, since the lighthouse isn't round, we're getting distinct 4 different shades of gray. It's actually kind of cool. So how closely do you, as a starting point anyway, what do you recommend to people about following the rule of thirds? How is a good starting point?
It's a starting point. I mean, I like to say it's like the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay.
Well, they're not exactly rules. They're more like guidelines. Okay, so don't get fascist about any
Sure.
any rule. Okay,
Yeah.
it's just a guideline.
Yeah.
So
But if you don't know what to do, not
Yeah.
a bad place to start.
a good place to start, and thinking about the rule of thirds, where am I going to place the horizon line? So in this case, I'm having 2/3 of the foreground is
Well, that's where the interest is.
right.
Yeah, that's something that I'm sure you've seen this a lot, where people get enamored with both the foreground and the sky, and end up putting the horizon dead center, and you're like this, you're not sure what it is you're being asked to look at. So pick one. Pick the foreground or pick the sky, not both of them. Okay, this is scene 5, take 1. Joe and Lee get swept off to sea.
Okay, so we're out here, rather precariously perched here on this wet breakwater. There's a great shot here, but maybe a little too wet for comfort.
Well, we're protecting our gear with our bodies.
Yes.
So again, luckily we have our exposure already.
Yeah.
But the surf is really moving in,
Yeah.
and we're getting some big waves every once in a while. So, what kind of shutter speed do you think we need to stop the action?
Probably to really get the spray right, about a 500.
500th? Okay. So since I'm still using my polarizer, I'm going to have to really up my ISO a bit.
Right.
All right, so what are you thinking here? What's your approach?
Well, my approach is to try and, frame up a shot so that there's a sort of a sweep here in the foreground.
So you got a nice S-curve leading to the lighthouse?
Yeah, a bit of an S-curve. We've got foreground rocks, and then we can see the breakwater sort of leading right up to the lighthouse. And we have water breaking across this breakwater, and so we're looking for the spray of the foam.
Yeah.
I'm going for a 500th of a second.
It's very dramatic. Oh, here comes a wave. See now,
Here we go.
It's these waves.
No
that are the
bracketing.
payoff. No bracketing. We're going to get it right at the first. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll see these images. This is very cool stuff. We got spray right at the base of the light. Here comes a big one too. That's very cool. I'm glad we're not standing over there.
Yeah. But we do have to walk back that way.
True. All right, I'll stand on the shore side of you. So again, we don't have any cloud. We got one little strip of clouds that's starting to show up. Still not much to speak about. So continue minimizing the sky? Stay
I would say at this point it's all about the water, the rocks, and the breakwater. So I'm keeping the horizon about 1/3.
Okay.
I'm actually placing the lighthouse right at the intersection of third lines.
Okay.
Which are the
So
kind
you're
of
going the
focus.
right third on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also at this point, I'm actually thinking of opening up just a little bit, because we only see a tiny sliver of that lighthouse, and we're actually not really seeing the fully lit side.
True.
So if that just goes and blows out, it's a small element in the frame. Really, the sky behind the lighthouse is brighter than anything else. I'm more concerned about detail in the rocks here, but I also don't want to blow out the waves.
Right. Speaking of which, come look.
Yeah. It is getting a little frothy out here, so
Yes.
I think I've got my shot. So
All right.
what do you say we?
Let's head in.
So yeah, basically right now I'm going to be sort of parked here waiting for the light to get just right. I may get up and take some pictures with a second camera or something, just for fun. But I've set this up as my hero shot, so I'm just going to kind of wait it out.
All right. Well, Lee was also here last night.
Yes.
And the clouds cooperated a little bit better. So when he goes to process, we'll get to see some of his shots, kind of same point of view, but with a little nicer cloudscape behind, and you'll see they're going to be really sweet. What you can see, I don't know if you can see it on the video or not, but as the sun is getting lower, we are starting to get a little bit more of a golden glow on the rocks here. So that's starting to look a lot nicer. And we'll decide if we want to Photoshop out the people that are in the way of our lighthouse or not later.
Yeah,
They're
possibly.
okay. Does give some scale to the lighthouse. So.
We can also Photoshop some clouds in.
That's
We'll see.
true.
Maybe I'll do that.
All right. So we just got to wait for the light at this point. We're just going to sit on the rocks and relax and keep metering and make sure that we get those white highlights right to the right So we got good detail on our shadows. And again, like you said earlier, what was the phrase you used?
It's too easy to get it right.
I love that.
Why not do it?
So I'm going to steal that from Lee. It is too easy to get it right. And while we're here, Bobby Lane is right behind Rick as we're filming, and there's a little yard sale going on down the street. She just took the entire yard sale and loaded it into the back of her car while we're here shooting. So we're going to shoot a little bit here, and we'll be back tomorrow. So we'll see you then. So you can see from my shots, I really had planned them to be able to put clouds in after the fact. Stay tuned. Lee is going to do a phenomenal demonstration going from Lightroom into Photoshop to really enhance an image of some of the stuff he got at sunrise that morning when there was still some clouds. I think he was also there the day ahead of time. Someone asked, what time of day were we shooting? It was certainly not the golden hour. True. We were shooting from pretty much early afternoon to late afternoon. And that's one of the things about when you're doing travel photography. If you can be there at sunrise or at near sunset, wonderful. However, a lot of times you don't have that. You don't have that opportunity. So what we're talking about today is how to make the best of the environment that you're presented with. Yes, you're going to see some sunrise shots. And yes, we did wait until later in the afternoon where the shadows got longer. Not always an option, though. Someone asked Lee about how he feels about using a monopod instead of a tripod. I don't know what his answer was in there, but monopods I find great for video. If you're going to stabilize a camera, though, for me, a tripod's the way to go generally. Monopod's good if you're going to be supporting a really long lens, but if you're going to be stationary, then I would prefer to go with the tripod, and that's why I use this one. This is a Benro Travel Angel 2. It's a carbon fiber tripod, extremely light. And oh, by the way, just to show you, if you prefer a monopod, this tripod turns into a monopod. One of the legs screws off, and you can put the head right on top of here, and you get 2-in-1. So I do have monopods that I use, primarily more for video than stills. But if you need both in one, Travel Angel 2. Love this thing. Someone asked about do we use single shots like to capture spray or fast continuous shooting? I watched Lee work. I didn't see him doing fast. I don't ever shoot fast shooting. For me, I'm a single shot shooter. It's a style thing, but I like to sit and observe what's going on in the environment, and I know Lee does as well. Watch the flow, watch what's going on, and I find that I get the best shots by just timing and watching. Someone said they have a 478DR instead of the 758. And that has a 5-degree spot meter available for it, where the spot meter on the 758 is a 1-degree spot meter. So they asked, would it work as well on the Lighthouse for measuring the highlights? Other than the fact that it's a 5-degree spot meter, it still does work well. Just understand that the spread is going to be much greater because it's 5 degrees of the field of view. So what you'll have to do is you could do it, but you're just going to have to get closer. That's really the answer. Someone asked, did I get wet? No, I kept Lee in between me and the ocean, so I stayed pretty dry. Lee got a little bit wet. So someone says a good question. What do you do if there are people hanging around the scene and you want that shot? Well, there's a couple of answers to that. One, you can Photoshop them out later. Decide if they fit in with the scene or not. Sometimes I will edit them out. Sometimes I'll leave them there. Occasionally, we'll go to some kind of iconic location. And you sometimes will get somebody who isn't cooperating. For example, last year we were at Grand Teton photographing the Molten Barns, one of those iconic shots. And there were a line probably of 18 to 20 photographers kind of all waiting for the sun to come over the peaks and light up the barn. And this one woman positioned herself 20 yards in front of all of us so that she was in everybody's shot. So after probably the 6th person went over and talked to her and asked her to move, she finally did. But just start the conversation. In general, most people will cooperate pretty well. Somebody said, any concern about saltwater spray contaminating your camera? Yes, that is something you really have to look for. And I did notice that Lee in that last video positioned himself. You don't want salt water getting into these things. That's really bad. So you do have to be careful of that. So we had a great adventure heading out onto that breakwater. And really, with the tide coming in and the sweep of the rocks up to the lighthouse, those visual elements really added to the image. So the lessons to be learned so far have been, 1, be careful about clipping the highlights. They're one of the worst errors you can make. You don't want to underexpose them, but clipping them is the absolute worst. And 2, when you're presented with a cloudless sky, minimize the amount of sky in the image. You might want to start by putting the horizon on the top third of the frame. Yes, rule of thirds, think of it as guideline of thirds, but in this case, it actually did work pretty well. So what do you do when the weather just doesn't cooperate? You've made a trip. Maybe it's a once-in-a-lifetime visit, and you really want to photograph some iconic scenes to bring back with you to share with others. But it's raining. Bummer. So what to do? What to do? Look on this as an opportunity, not a problem. The challenge you may be presented with should start you thinking about what images are there waiting to be made. I'm all for beautiful weather. However, stormy weather often presents more dramatic opportunities for images with different moods. Now, when we woke up the next morning, we were presented with a light drizzle, and the forecast was pretty much the same for the whole day. So what was the approach? When Lee got there, he decided to begin focusing on the macro, finding the beauty in the smaller objects and patterns. Absolutely excellent idea. He had his camera pointed down. He was going in for some of the rock patterns. I decided to take a little different tack. I put a 9-stop neutral density filter on my camera. I went for long exposures. And I was going for that smooth seas to contrast the sharp rocks. So again, many times Lee and I are standing right next to each other, completely see a different thing. And that's one of the beauties of photographing with someone else. So let's head out again. This time it's the next morning. We've got overcast skies, the tide is out, and see what approaches are possible and what opportunities might present themselves when you don't have picture postcard weather. Lee, what a big difference a day makes, huh?
Yeah, we're out here. It's overcast. It's about to rain on us. I've got my umbrella.
It's not going to rain. You brought your umbrella.
That's right.
if he hadn't brought his umbrella, it'd be pouring there now. So, holy cow, also where we're standing would have been up to our shoulders in water at the end of the day yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's low tide, completely different look. And it's allowed us to come out into the water a little bit more and get a really interesting view back to the shore over the ocean.
Yes, awesome rocks here. So anyway, I think it really calls for a completely different strategy.
All right, so what's your approach here?
Well, I'm looking at this, and there's actually some detail in the sky. We were thinking it might be totally blank, flat, white, overcast day, but there's actually some cloud structure in the sky. And in order to preserve that and actually record it, I'm going to aim for a middle gray. I'm just going to take a reading off the sky, do one exposure for the sky. Because in almost every shot we're going to see here today, the sky is going to be almost the brightest thing in the scene. I'm going to record one shot for the sky, which I will blend in later on.
Okay.
And then I'll base my exposure off of the brightness range that I want to carry.
So what Lee told me his plan is he's going to do this all in Photoshop and a lot of heavy lifting. I'm really looking forward to seeing his demonstration. I'm going to take a shortcut. I'm going to shoot my stuff, and I'm going to plan on processing it in Nick Silver effects because I really see this as a black and white day to me.
Oh, totally, so. Yeah. The dull lighting of the sky is, there's not a lot of brightness in the colors, so yeah, clearly a black and white.
Go for form and texture today.
Yeah.
So we both got our meters out. You mentioned you're going to try to bring the sky down.
Yeah.
So how are you going to meter for that?
Well, basically, I'll just meter off the sky and then expose for that.
So you're going to make that your middle gray?
Make that my middle gray. That way I can expand the range in that section, add some contrast to bring out some cloud structures. I figure I'll just shoot a blank sky, or, you know, in this case, there's actually some interest in there. I'll expose for the sky, and then I've got a big expanse of sky that I can throw into something if the sky's not too interesting. So we'll have some fun later on.
I just put a 9-stop ND filter on, so I'm shooting 30-second exposures at f/22. And what I'm after is, the rocks are really so pretty, and we've got the moving water around it. What the long exposure is going to do is just kind of almost turn that to glass. It's going to be really cool, kind of unique looking. And as we're out here a little bit, we're really loving this day. This is the kind of thing that might disappoint you when you first arrive at the scene. But stop and look. There are so many opportunities here. You just have to think a little differently. And I'm really thinking that I'm going to like the stuff we get today much better than our bright blue sunny sky day yesterday. So let's see what happens. But I think this is going to be cool. Take advantage of the place. Take the cards you're dealt and make the most of it. So that's what we're going to do. And we're having fun. This is a beautiful spot. And with the low tide, being able to go out off into the ocean a little bit more on these rocks, very sweet.
So, you know, I'm walking around here looking at the big scene, the macro scene, the big landscape. But you look down and this is awesome here. We've got amazing textures and colors and you know, you don't want to lose sight of the leaves for the forest. So I'm going to take a picture of the ground here. This is awesome, you know. The colors and the textures are going to be great. Little tide pools all over the place. I think there's a lot of subject matter right at our feet. Whoa.
He was on a roll, so I did, but I was about to photobomb him.
You're going to photobomb me?
Joe was right behind you the whole time. Pretty funny.
So just a couple quick questions before we continue. Someone asked, how effective can you meter using a Sekonic 358 or 478? They're both wonderful meters. I have both of them. I have two 358s still, as a matter of fact. However, for me, a lot of you guys know that I'm primarily first a landscape shooter and then a portrait shooter. To me, those are both great studio meters, especially when you're using flash. The ultimate for landscape shooting is the 758 because of its integrated spot meter. To me, that just trumps everything. That said, those other meters can be used very well outside using the incident to be able to get what the incident light is doing. I've done some programs on that about protecting the sun from actually hitting the dome. And what you can learn to do is combine those meters with your camera spot meter. If you want to get 1 degree spot metering out of your camera, you're going to need to have a longer lens. And you can do that. You can switch your camera to spot metering. Put a 120 to a 200 millimeter lens, depending on if you're a crop sensor or full frame. For a full frame, closer to 200 millimeters is going to give you pretty much a 1 degree angle when you're doing your spot metering. So that is an option, and then you have to just do a little math in your head to try to figure out how that's going to integrate. But yes, you can do that. Someone said, I'm assuming a graduated neutral density filter wouldn't work because the lighthouse would stick up into the filter area. True, you could use one and just get it to the very top, but you're right. In this case, a huge element of our photograph was going to be sticking up into that sky. So really the answer is to just get the best exposure possible, and then you can do some processing in post, as we're going to see Lee do in a bit. So as it turned out, Lee and I both preferred the cloudy skies, the low tide, and the flatter light than the pure blue of the previous afternoon. Now you are going to see Lee do an edit on one of the shots he got from the previous morning when he did have some beautiful skies, and you're going to see some really cool Photoshop editing coming up in just a minute. Now when we got there that morning, I approached the day thinking in black and white. Lee got some great images while keeping them in color. And as I mentioned earlier, that's one of the great things about shooting with another photographer or going on a photo workshop. You all learn from each other. You get a chance to see a scene in a different way. You might be standing right next to each other and get a completely different shot. So now that those images have been captured, what do you do with the raw file? That's going to have an enormous impact on the final image. Now there are still some people out there who think editing is cheating. But remember, your camera doesn't see the way your eyes do. That means your images often need, or will at least greatly benefit from post-processing. Now, Lee is a master of image editing, and he's prepared a wonderful editing session for us using an image from the shoot. Now, this is about a 15-16 minute demo, so take a look and we'll get back to some questions when we come back.
Okay, I thought I'd share with you guys my color workflow. And as you can see here, the images, I've got a bunch of images here from actually taken the first day that I came out here, the day before we started shooting for the webinar. Yeah, I've got a little bit of clouds in the sky, and you can see I'm not really bracketing the exposures because I know if I place my cursor right on the highlight side, you can see it's just under 90. Which is exactly where I want my highlight, and so this has been exposed the way I want it, and now I'm going to just see how to bring it in best I can into Photoshop, where I'm really going to finish this. So my strategy really is not to do too much in the raw processor, but I'm feeling that this is too cold a rendering, so I'm going to take some creative license here. This was coming at sunset, so it really should be warmer, so I'm going to warm it up a little bit here, and maybe add just a touch of magenta in there. I'm just trying to get it to the sense of the sunset light that I remember at the scene. So it's a landscape, it can be almost anything. I don't want the clouds to get too pink, so I'm just kind of cruising over here with the cursor and seeing that they're just a little bit on the blue side, which is fine, and I'm a little warm here on my highlight, which makes sense to me. I could maybe be just a little bit warmer. I definitely want this to look a little bit like late afternoon sunset light. Okay, now I think my strategy here is to maybe just knock the exposure down just a little, get it a little bit richer looking. I don't want to lose too much shadow, so I'm going to open up in the shadows just a little bit. I'm just a nudge, like half a stop, kind of, I get a nicer sort of separation of the highlight to the white of the lighthouse. Now the other thing I'm noticing is I've got a little perspective convergence because my camera angle is very low. So I'm going to correct for that. I'm going to go into the lens corrections here, and we'll go ahead and remove chromatic aberration. Now the lens corrections that I do want to use, though, are to correct for the vertical perspective. So I've got my I'm in lens corrections in the manual panel here, and I'm going to change the vertical perspective just a little bit. I'm going to just kind of nudge it a little bit until that lighthouse looks a little more straight up and down. And you can see here that I'm coming in on the bottom, so I want to constrain the crop. And I think that's doing exactly what I want it to do. Okay, maybe go back up here to basic and maybe just a touch of extra saturation. I don't want to go too far. See, I'm pulling out some more color in here. The sky's getting a little more colorful, but really I tend to be very conservative here, very, very conservative. So maybe just a little bit. I don't want to push it too far. Okay, so now I'm going to edit this in Photoshop. So I go in here, Photo, Edit In, and I'm going to go ahead and open it as a smart object only because I don't want to save another version of this file at this point. I don't want to create a new one at this point. I want to wait until I've done all my edits, and then I'm going to place it in a work in progress folder. So I'm going to open up as a smart object, not because I necessarily want to do anything in Photoshop with that smart object, but because I want to delay the the saving. So here we are in Photoshop, smart object. I'm going to go ahead and flatten it. I actually don't need to use the smart object. What I'm more concerned with now is looking at the channel structure. So I'm thinking in terms of, I always think of a color image in terms of black and white. And what we have is a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel. And you'll notice the red channel really seems to have the best contrast overall. This is almost always the case in landscapes, but look how it changes the way the rocks look. There's more contrast in the sky. Everything about the red channel is better. So what I'm going to do is make a channel mixer adjustment. And so I'll go over here to my adjustment panel and select channel mixer. And I'm going to say make a black and white red filter. This gives me 100% of the red channel, and you notice that now it's a black and white, and it has that kind of increased contrast. Now here's the first trick. I'm going to take my blending mode from normal, and I'm going to say luminosity. Okay, so we've got the sky is a little darker, the rocks are a little lighter, and the blue ocean's a little darker. Sort of nicer contrast overall, but it's doing two things at once. It's lightening the warm elements and it's darkening the cool elements. Now let me just go back and see if there's any other part of the image that I like better in one of the other channels. So I know what the red channel looks like. The green channel is a little bit darker rocks. The blue channel has the darkest rocks, at least in the foreground. Okay, so maybe I'll do something. I want to maybe darken this rock, so I want to keep the rocks kind of in the lightning effect in the center. So now I'm going to do another trick here. We'll make another channel mixer. Okay, now this channel mixer, if I go ahead and say black and white with the blue filter, I'm going to get a version of these rocks that have already been lightened because the previous channel mixer is lightening those rocks. I'd actually like these rocks to be even darker. So I'm going to use another little trick to reach down to the original background layer to pull up essentially the blue channel from the original black background layer, which is going to have darker blue, darker rocks. So I'm going to go down here to blending options, and let's just see if we can see this in effect. So my knockout here is none. I'm going to go down to deep. And you notice how everything got a little darker. That's because when we knock out deep, we're going down to the background to pull up the channel from the background up in here into this layer. And then I'll change my blend mode to luminosity. And notice how dark these rocks got. Okay, so I actually mostly like it in this rock. So I'm going to, and possibly down around in here, makes these a little darker. But I don't like it everywhere else. We're going to use it in the foreground rocks, but I don't want to use it everywhere. So I'm going to invert this layer mask, and that's now black. Just did a Command I to invert that. And now I'm going to take let's just start painting in the darker rock, a little redder rock. Maybe using a opacity of 30%, I'll bring it in gradually. I just want to darken that area just a little bit, and I'm going to darken these rocks. I'll go back there. Okay. It's a very subtle kind of thing. I want to keep everything pushing towards that white lighthouse. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to do another little trick here. We're going to duplicate this image. I'm going to duplicate the merged layers. So now I have two copies. And they're both the same. Only this copy, I'm going to change the mode from RGB to LAB. Okay, LAB. And why am I doing that? I'm doing that because now the channels are different. We have an A channel, we have a B channel. You notice how the the B channel is, these A and B channels are very strange looking because they're really the lightness values have to do with color rather than contrast. All the contrast and tone is in the L channel. Okay, so there's some interesting things that are going to happen when we play around with those. So right now I'm in LAB. I'm going to do a crazy kind of curve here to really juice up the saturation. I'm not looking for extra color, but I'm looking for the change in the channels that's going to occur. So I'm going to, especially the B channel. Let's really we're going to contrast up the B channel, which is going to increase the saturation of the blue sky. I mean, it's almost like ridiculously saturated, right? And now let's check out what that B channel looks like, because I've increased the contrast in the B channel. So I'm really putting a lot of contrast into the sky. And the areas that are more yellow than they are blue are brighter. The areas that are more blue than they are yellow are darker. And the areas that have no color are medium gray. So let's see what I'm going to do with that. Okay, so I'm back at my original. I'd kind of like the sky to be, a little darker than it already is. I mean, it did get a bit darker with that red channel move, but let's make it even darker. So I'm going to put an empty layer up there, and then we're going to use another kind of trick advanced feature here, image, apply image, and I'm going to go to my copy, and I'm going to get that B channel. Okay, so I put my B channel in there. Now if I place this odd looking B channel in overlay mode, look what happens to that sky. It's also really lightening all of the warmer elements here, but I don't have to have it do that. Okay, I can use blending options to blend that out, blend out that that move. So I'm only going to use the darkening parts of this layer. So I'm going to my blending options, and I'm going to take out everything that's lighter than 128 by using this little move here. So this layer is the B channel overlay layer, and in that overlay calculation, everything darker than 128 will darken the underlying image. Anything lighter than 128 would normally lighten the underlying image, but by moving this slider over to that point, that midpoint 128, I'm blending through everything that's lighter than 128 in this B channel layer. So let me just label that B channel so we don't lose track of that. Okay, so you can kind of see it's also darkening that little bit of blue there. I kind of like that blue being a little bit lighter, so I'm going to mask it out. So I just get a brush with black paint. I've got a layer mask there. I'll leave that blue thing a little brighter, just another little something kind of interesting in the composition. Okay, so we've done something pretty trick here without doing any retouching or masking or anything like that. Perhaps now I'll go back to my LAB copy, and so this is like ludicrously saturated. So let's go back to something a little more normal. Perhaps a little bit more saturated. Let's just go for a little more saturation. So I'm making the B channel steeper, and that enhances the blue and the yellow saturation. And maybe we'll add just a tad of saturation boost in the B channel as well. So we've got just a little more saturation, just a little more colorful, especially in the sky. And I'll go ahead and flatten that. And we'll drag this on top of the RGB document. And Photoshop is very clever. It'll actually do the mode change, and I'm holding down the Shift key, dragging with the Move tool up to the other tab. It comes forward, and I drop this on top. And now I'm going to just place this in color mode. So I'm getting a little more enhanced color. That's too much. It's still a little too colorful. So and just a little more color in the sky. I like it a little bit better, and we'll call that finished. That was a little trick, and I went through it really quickly. If you want to see more of this kind of stuff, I'm going to go through some little more detailed video tutorials, and we'll have the links here. I'll have them up on YouTube for your viewing pleasure. So have a great one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
So a couple questions, because I do want to get things moving and close to finishing up. Someone asked, how do you calibrate your light meter to your camera's meter? That's what the Sekonic DTS software does. It's a free software. It works with the 758 and the 478, and you can just download it from sekonic.com, and we'll include the link for that as well. Someone said, how do you compensate a 2.5 or 3-stop difference using a 478DR since you don't have that ISO 2 button? There is a filter compensation menu in the 478. You just have a different approach to it. I don't have one here with me on the set, but if you take a look through the menus on the 478, it is there. Someone also asked, can your profile be set on the 758 for multiple cameras? The answer to that is yes. The meter itself can hold 3 different profiles. You can make as many as you want with the software, and you can download 3 that you can cycle through. It's pretty easy to get to. I've got 3 different profiles in my meter. If you hold in the ISO 1 button and then toggle through midtone, you'll see on the screen it will cycle through camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and that's where those profiles go. So let's continue on. I'm sure in that demonstration you saw some new ways to approach and edit. And it's going to probably take a couple of views to take it all in. I know I've watched it a couple of times, and I've been teaching Photoshop for 20 years. You can always learn something new or a new way of approaching a task, and Lee just gave us some great tips that we can apply into our workflow. We'll post the recording again, and you can watch it as many times as you need. So we're done exploring, we're done shooting, and we've done some edits. Let's just head back to the lighthouse real quick for just a minute, and I'm going to summarize our experience with our shoot with Lee Varis. So let's just kind of summarize up. You know, we both brought our meters out here.
Yeah.
Again, just kind of really short, what's the benefit of having one of these things?
Well, the benefit really is that you know that you're capturing good data when you can actually measure it and know where it's going to be in the full range of your exposure.
So it takes the guesswork out.
Takes the guesswork out, and you know, you can look at a histogram all you want, but you really get so much more information from the meter in knowing exactly what area the image is falling on, what, you know, exposure and what zone.
You arrive at a place. What's the approach? You know, maybe it's a vacation, maybe it's a photo shoot.
Well,
what's the first thing
you know, the first thing is just to walk around and observe, you know, see what's around you, see how the light changes from different directions, and then you just kind of develop a strategy for how you're going to approach the photography.
All right, so we came here today. We came here yesterday. We had very different conditions: bright blue skies, not a cloud anywhere, but very dramatic seas.
Yes.
We come back this morning, pretty much overcast, although we have some interesting texture in the clouds. Low tide, very different energy, different environment, but both of them were valid.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can always get a good picture. You can always get a good picture.
That's a good point. That's something everybody really needs to know. You can get a good picture anytime, anywhere. You just might have to change your focus.
That's right. That's right.
Not literally, figuratively. So you can find out what Lee's up to. He's got a lot of phenomenal blog posts as well. Just go on to varis.com, V-A-R-I-S, but we'll send you the link as well. Man's got a lot to offer. He's a great writer, a great photographer, and he's a lot of fun. So again, Lee, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
It has. Thank you.
Varis.com. Check it out. See you again. Just one last question before we finish up. This is a good one. Someone asked, is it necessary to profile or do an exposure profile for your camera with different lenses? My experience has been that there's not enough difference to bother. I would do it with different ISOs, however. Different lenses, no. Different ISOs, yes. So if you do one at 100 ISO and do one at 1600 or 2500 ISO, you're probably going to see a little crunching of the tonal range of the camera when you get to the high ISOs. So that wouldn't hurt, but lenses, nah, I wouldn't bother. I hope you found some nuggets of information and philosophy that you can put to use in your photography. There's almost always a great image to be made wherever you go. You just need to adjust your thinking and your point of view. Look to the macro rather than the large landscape when it's raining or overcast. Limit the sky when there's not a cloud to be found, and make sure that the digital capture you make contains the best data possible. That will provide you with the most latitude and flexibility when it's time for post-processing. Now, do you have to have a light meter to accomplish these results? Of course not. You can bracket away, and in some cases, your camera meter is going to give you the perfect information. But like Lee said, it's so easy to get it right, why not do it? And I agree with that, as many of you know. The environment and the scene will determine how important a meter is. With experience, you'll learn to recognize when your camera meter will perform just fine. And that means that a handheld light meter is not only a great imaging tool, but it also teaches you about light as well. The choice is ultimately yours, and you have to work in a way that makes sense to you. Think about the scene in front of you, walk around it, watch what the light is doing, and what elements are present to create a harmonious composition. The light meter simply gives you information to get the best possible exposure, and this frees you from bracketing, wasted time, and wasted moments. Our goal as photographers should always be to make a picture, not to simply take one. These tools help by giving you the best starting point possible. I'd really like to thank Lee Varis for his time. Lee, I'm sorry you're not here with us. Thanks for joining in the chat room. His patience and his experience and knowledge were wonderful to be. It was wonderful for you to share that with us. For more information on what Lee is up to, his books, his workshops, visit varis.com. You might not have something to write with. We'll include the links in our follow-up email to you. That's it for today. I'd like to also thank Sekonic for sponsoring us. And of course, you guys, thanks for watching and thanks for the great questions. So until next time, keep shooting, keep learning, and be well. Bye-bye.